That is Sudbury's Big Nickel, and boy, is it ever big. 9 meters in diameter, 2 feet thick, 65 million times the size of the little nickel that it's meant to commemorate. This nickel in my hand is not only little in size, but it is little in purchasing power. But it wasn't always this way. Back in 1914, this nickel had more purchasing power than a loonie has today. Between 1991 and 2016, the nickel lost 40% of its purchasing power. The Deputy Minister of Finance, Paul Rochon, even once said that there's almost nothing left in the entire Canadian economy that the nickel can purchase. Now, we take for granted that money loses value to inflation every year, but why is that the case? It makes no sense. Technology and trade actually reduce the cost of things. For example, the amount of metal that is necessary for a beer can is way down. We can produce far more food on far less land. And there's the dematerialization of culture and information. We no longer have the cost of all the plastic for VHS cassettes, or the paper, pulp, and delivery costs of a newspaper. All those things are now beamed to us over the internet. Those things all reduce the cost of production. So if it's cheaper to make stuff, why is it more expensive to buy stuff? Well, the answer is that governments induce or force feed inflation into our economy. They do this by growing the supply of money faster than the growth in the services and goods that money buys. What's their motive? Well, inflation leads to certain winners. One, government itself. When they create more cash, they can spend more cash without having to overtly tax it out of your hands. That means that they can quietly and secretly pass on the cost to consumers without anybody really realizing that they are the culprit. Also, the wealthy and the corporate class get richer as their assets inflate in value. The losers, of course, are the working class as their wages diminish in purchasing power. That's why housing, fuel, and other essentials have become more expensive and out of reach for our working peoples. Inflation takes from the have-nots and gives to the have-yachts, and that's why people in power like it so much. So what's the solution? Well, common sense. Let's change our monetary policy to slow the growth in money supply to match the growth in the goods and services that it buys. Let's require our Bank of Canada keep inflation as low as humanly possible as part of its legal mandate. And let's give the Auditor General the power to make sure that the central bank is following that mandate. Let's also get rid of the inflationary deficits that are causing all of the money creation in the first place by getting rid of government waste and slowing the growth of government costs so that the taxpayer and the economy can actually support the costs that governments incur. Finally, instead of creating more cash, let's start creating more of what cash buys. Grow more food, build more houses, and produce more clean, green Canadian oil and gas and other energy. We have to get rid of the gatekeepers that prevent that production so that we can unleash the productive forces of our workers and entrepreneurs and make their dollars and their paychecks more powerful. One final piece of trivia about this big coin behind us. We call it the nickel, but it's almost entirely made of steel, just like the little coin that it is meant to commemorate. So why is it that they call it nickel? Well, nickel is added to the steel because of its rust-proofing powers. That's how you get stainless steel. You add nickel. And just as nickel rust-proofs the steel against decay, we need a strong money policy to protect our money against decay and inflation. That is just common sense. Speaking of the amount of nickel in a nickel, can you see the difference between these three coins? Kyle could. He's a coin collector. And he checked on the composition of the coins, which you can see on the back. This is 81, this is 2001, this is 2021. In other words, separated by 20 years. Now look how much the composition has changed in each of these nickels. Used to be almost 100% nickel was in a nickel. Then it went to 75% copper. And now it's 94.5% steel, 3.5% copper, and only 2% nickel. Why? In order to make more coins, they're using less valuable nickel and more steel in order to allow them to inflate the quantity of our coins.